Have you ever dunked a biscuit? Do you like your biscuits crunchy or soggy? Sit back with a nice cup of tea and enjoy this episode of...
This episode of Aprender Inglés con Rez and Craig.
Hello, I'm Reza.
And I'm Craig.
You can hear Craig still crunching away on his biscuit. That's what the sound is.
With over 45 years of teaching English between us, we're going to help you improve your grammar, your vocabulary, your pronunciation, and this week, your biscuits. So welcome to the podcast. How are you, Reza?
I'm fine, Craig. And by the way, I'm very impressed that you were able to say all that with your mouth full of biscuit.
Well, we've just had a lovely cup of tea and some biscuits between episodes because, as you know, we tend to record more than one episode every time we meet. So, yeah, we had some biscuits and we're going to talk about biscuits today because they are quite a big part of English culture.
People often ask us how we actually make, how do we produce, how do we do our podcasts? Because they seem to be pretty good, although I say so myself. And we would say that biscuits are partly the reason. It's very important for us between recording episodes to have a nice cup of tea or coffee and a biscuit. And we usually record in Craig's house, and they've always got very good biscuits here, I have to say. Today, we had a French and a Swedish type of biscuit. So we take it very seriously, eh?
Yep, we take our biscuits seriously. But before we go more into biscuit culture, we have a voice message from Ana Fernandez, who is preparing for her B2 level exam. So let's listen to Ana.
Hi guys, it's Ana Fernandez speaking. I am a student of English who lives in Madrid. I have been listening to you since a long time ago, but this is the first time I decided to send you a voice message. I am preparing a B2 exam for Trinity College, and for this purpose I am watching TV programs, TV serials in English. Watching these kinds of TV programs, I listen to the speaker saying, I do believe, and do make, I do play. And my question is, what is the difference between I do believe and I believe, for example? Because I don't find the difference. I hope this is the first time these questions comes out, and I hope also you can solve me as soon as possible. Thanks you very much in advance. Cheers.
Well, thank you, Anna. It's lovely to hear your voice, and thanks for sending your message. Any comments, Reza?
Yes, Anna, thanks very much. By the way, your speaking is very good pronunciation, and very good intonation as well. I think you're going to do well in your B2 exam. Good question about do and did and other auxiliary verbs being used in positive sentences. That's what she's asking, Craig, isn't it? Why do we use them in positive sentences?
Why do we use them? Well, we do use them, and we'll explain why. But just one or two things about Anna's message. I liked the way that she used the present perfect continuous correctly. She said, I have been listening to you. I have been listening to your podcast for a long time, etc. But you did make a small mistake right at the end, Anna, with a phrasal verb. You said, I hope this is the first time this question comes out. The correct phrasal verb is come up. So I hope this is the first time this question has come up. To come up means surgir. So, or salir. So a subject or a topic or a question comes up. So Reza, we use auxiliary verbs for emphasis, don't we?
Yes, we certainly do.
We certainly do.
It was just too easy. I couldn't resist it.
He does believe that we use them for emphasis.
We do use auxiliaries in positive sentences more or less every day, but don't overdo it. Don't do it too much. If you do that, you'll sound silly, like everything in life. So they're used for special emphasis to perhaps contradict someone, or to say that something is really true when someone is doubting, that's dudar, if it is true. Let's give you an example. Imagine a parent said to the child, I told you to clean your room yesterday. You didn't clean your room. And the child says, I did clean my room yesterday. And the parent says, are you sure? Doesn't look very clean to me. I did. I'm telling you, I did clean my room. So the parent doubts the truth of what the child's saying, but the child is saying, no, it is true, even though you don't believe me. That's a good case for using the auxiliary. If it's past did, if it's present do, if it's future will. So in this case, to insist that what you're saying is true.
Another example, you could say to your partner, your significant other, the important person in your life, I love you. That's nice, isn't it? I love you. But I do love you gives it more emphasis. And as Reza said, maybe helps to clarify any doubt or any suspicion that maybe it's not true. Oh, you don't love me. I do love you. Or you could just say, I do love you, to make it stronger, to make it more powerful. So that's when you use do or does or did, Anna.
As I said at the beginning, it can also be used to contradict or to give information which you think the listener might be surprised to hear. For example, many people criticize the weather in Britain. They say it rains all the time. And most people say, yeah, rain all the time, grey skies, not very nice. Whereas a friend of mine, Peter, says, well, I do, in fact, like the weather in the UK. I like rain. I like grey skies. I do personally like it. That do is to surprise you or to insist on something that you might not have expected. That's another use of auxiliary.
And before we move on to speak about biscuits, I do want to remind you that you can sign up for our email list to get news and to get links and reminders about our latest podcasts. So at the moment, we're sending one every month, and you have a list of all the podcasts that we have made and released in that month, and also news and anything different or anything that we're doing on the internet that you think you might like to know about that will be useful for you while you're studying. So you can sign up on our webpage at inglespodcast.com. Biscuits, Reza. Any vocabulary connected to biscuits?
There certainly is. In fact, there's so much that we can't really go into it all because there's so many types of biscuits that we can't possibly list all of them. But we'll talk about the most important aspects. Let's start by getting that big debate out of the way. Biscuit or cookie? Well, it's the same thing. But biscuit, that's B-I-S-C-U-I-T, but pronounced biscuit, is what people say in the UK and Ireland. I'm not sure about Australia. I don't know. I'll have to check that out. But in America, they don't say that. They say cookie. However, sometimes we do say cookie in the United Kingdom. But when we say that in the UK, we're usually referring to a specific type of biscuit, right, Craig?
Yeah, you often hear chocolate chip cookie, for example. So the word cookie, I think, is very much accepted in the UK as a synonym or a type of biscuit. So if you offer someone a cookie, say, would you like a cookie? A British person would understand that as a biscuit. However, biscuits in the US have a slightly different meaning. To an American, a biscuit is more like a very quick bread. It's something you might eat with a meal, and it's not usually sweet. So be careful, because biscuits in the US can have a slightly different meaning. They tend to be more savory, not so sweet, and similar to a scone eaten with a main meal, like bread, like you'd use bread. So in America, you might get biscuits with your meal.
Another very, very important word to know about the world of biscuits. And I don't know whether I should lower my voice now because I'm a bit worried my mum might hear this. and she would not improve. She would not approve at all.
Does your mum listen to the podcast?
I doubt it. I don't know if my mum knows what internet is, but if she finds me talking about dunking, I'm in big trouble.
Dunking? What's dunking?
Dunking. Well, to dunk, D-U-N-K, is a verb which means to dip, to put into water, into liquid, to dip a biscuit in a drink like tea or coffee or milk or colacao or whatever you fancy. That's to dunk. And so the action is dunking. So in the UK, many people dunk biscuits, but not everyone thinks it's polite to do so. Some people say that in public you shouldn't, it looks rude. So maybe you can do it on your own or in an intimate circle. My mum, who's very old-fashioned, says you just should not do it ever under any circumstances, full stop.
What's your opinion?
I love dunking. I really hope she's not listening because I dunk on my own in front of people, morning, noon and night. I dunk all the time.
Have you always dunked?
I've always been a dunker.
You've always been a dunker?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What about you?
Many people...
Are you a dunker?
I've always been a dunker. And what's curious is that if you go to France, you very often see people in cafes dunking croissants into their coffee. And it's a very acceptable social thing to do. I'm not so sure in the UK whether you'd see people in a cafe dunking biscuits for the reasons that you've said.
As far as I know, in Spain, this may be a bit old-fashioned, but I think it's acceptable to dunk not only churros, of course, which are designed to be dunked in chocolate or possibly colacao, but things like cupcakes, magdalenas. I've seen people dunk them in public in Spain. But they don't really dunk biscuits in Spain, strangely enough.
Although in Italy, it's accustomed to dunk biscottis, which are sweet almond biscuits in sweet wine. That's a very common Italian custom, and that's very socially acceptable. Yeah.
And in Valencia, there's a thing called un fartó, and the plural fartons, which is like a kind of breadstick, but a sweet breadstick, como un palo de pan, a breadstick, but it's sweet. And it's designed specifically to be dunked in la horchata, which is a very Valencian drink. So you should dunk it. You're positively encouraged to dunk it.
So those are some other things that you can dunk. And to dunk a biscuit is a very British thing to do, especially for Reza and I. Before we speak about different types of biscuits, originally, I'm not sure if you knew this, Reza, but originally biscuits were created for sailors and soldiers, made from flour and water, and a way for soldiers and sailors to get carbohydrates.
Yep.
So that back in the 1500s, that's how biscuits originated. And biscuit is taken from the French word, which means baked twice. So that's the origin of the word biscuits. And be careful of the pronunciation because the spelling, as Reza said, is a bit tricky. B-I-S-C-U-I-T. But the pronunciation, it's a double I sound. So it's biscuit, and the plural biscuits.
Yes, I had heard about those biscuits that were designed for ships. They called them ship biscuits, didn't they? Mm-hmm. Ship biscuits. But they weren't sweet at all.
No,
Not
it's
at all
just
sweet.
very basic flour and water just to get the carbohydrates into the body. Yeah.
Because I guess ordinary bread would have soon gone off. It would have gone bad very, very quickly. So they designed biscuits just to be able to keep it. And look how popular they've become all over the world. Who would have imagined?
Possibly one of the most popular biscuits and most basic is the Marie biscuit. Marie biscuit. And the most popular type of Marie biscuit in the UK is called rich tea, a rich tea biscuit. These kind of biscuits are also known as Maria biscuits, Maribon, and Marietta. And a bit of history for you. The Marie biscuit was created by the London bakery Peak Friends Company in 1874, it's a long time ago, to commemorate the marriage of the Grand Duchess Maria, hence the name, Maria Alexandrovna of Russia, to the Duke of Edinburgh. And after that, it became popular throughout Europe, particularly in Spain, where after the Civil War, the biscuits became a symbol of the country's economic recovery after many bakeries produced mass quantities to use a surplus of wheat that existed at that time. So that information's from Wikipedia, which is interesting because I didn't know that. It became popular in Spain as a sign of prosperity to use the extra wheat that they had after the war.
Oh, I didn't know that myself. That's very interesting. One thing I do know is that you see a lot of Marie biscuits in any Spanish supermarket. They're extremely popular to this day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, particularly with young people, but also with adults as well.
Do you like them yourself?
I like good quality ones. I'm glad you mentioned that because the quality of biscuits varies widely. For me, a bad Marie biscuit is something truly disgusting. It's awful. But a good one can be really nice. I like them personally, not too sweet. And I prefer the wholemeal ones, integral. We say in English, whole, entero. Meal is like el germen, let's say. So WHOLEMEAL, wholemeal, integral. Wholemeal, not too sweet, Marie biscuits. That's what I like. What about you?
No, I agree with you, but I do think the wholemeal ones can be a bit hard and crunchy for me. So they make my mouth dry. So it's a biscuit that I feel I have to dunk. So I would not probably eat one without a cup of tea or coffee. I have to dunk it in something.
Oh, me too. Yeah, it's got to go with something. Got to be dunked.
Another biscuit that needs dunking, in my opinion, is shortbread. So short, corto, and bread, pan, shortbread.
Most of our listeners will not have heard of that unless they've been to a particular country.
Yeah, you may have heard of Walker's shortbread, and they typically come branded in a tartan Scottish packet or tin. And if you've been to Scotland and you've seen Walker's shortbread, that's a very popular souvenir, a very popular present to bring back for your family and friends. And of course, it's exported all around the world. Are you a fan of shortbread?
I am. Not as much as my mum. My mum is absolutely obsessed with Marie biscuits and rich tea biscuits and shortbread. She loves them. But I do like a good shortbread, yeah.
If it's made with good butter.
Right. Good quality butter. And the most famous ones, as Craig said, are the Scottish ones. And yes, if you get a good quality Scottish shortbread, traditional shortbread, it can be good. But you know what? Here's something we should mention already. It's very hard to get biscuits in their pure original recipe, receta. These days, they add so many other things to the recipe. For example, very often I've checked the ingredients list in a packet of biscuits. And don't be surprised these days if a packet of shortbread or Marie or any biscuits has in it, for example, palm oil or a bit of soja. Needless to say, when the British invented shortbread and Marie, they didn't know what palm oil was or not much about it, and they certainly didn't put soy in it. So to get a pure biscuit in its original form probably isn't easy these days. No. So if I can find a good quality shortbread, I like it, but not a crappy is malucho, not a crappy mass-produced one. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, I'm with you. And the same goes for digestives, which is possibly one of my favorite types of biscuits.
Oh, me too.
So a digestive is typically a semi-sweet biscuit, which did originate in Scotland, and it was created in 1839 by two Scottish doctors. And the reason they created the digestive biscuit was to help with digestion, obviously, to digest food easily. So it has a medical background, which I didn't know. And it's one of the most popular biscuits in the UK. 4.4 million digestive biscuits are eaten every day in the UK.
Wow, every day. Mm-hmm. Wow. I know in my family, when I was growing up, we still kind of follow the tradition. We did and still do have digestive biscuits a little while after we have our dinner. Effectively, I guess.
So it helps the food go down, yeah.
And I think that's very common in the UK still. It's very typical to have your evening meal, let's say at about 6 o'clock or something like that, 6:30. And then at about 8 o'clock, maybe have a cup of tea and a digestive biscuit. It's very typical, isn't it, to this day?
It is, yep. Just before you go to bed. Another type of biscuit is a wafer. How do you say wafer in Spanish?
Barquillo, isn't it?
Barquillo. So wafers obviously often very crisp, quite sweet, very thin, flat and dry. And you may find them in the UK inside ice cream. Very common to have wafers in your ice cream. But you can make wafers into cookies or biscuits with a cream flavour in the middle, like a sandwich, so a wafer sandwich. For example, Kit Kat is an example of a wafer biscuit.
I have to say, I am very proud of British biscuits. I think the British make good biscuits. However, I think the Spanish possibly make better wafers. Yeah, what about that?
I think they tend to be crispier and tastier. I agree.
The Spanish do very good wafers. And I'm gonna promote my local area that I know here well, Valencia, or the Comunidad Valenciana. There's a company called Antiu Xixona, or Gijona, from Alicante, who make superb wafers. They're not paying us any money, by the way.
They should.
I'm just saying that because their barquillos, their wafers, are superb quality, really, really, really light, really crispy. The problem is you can eat about 50 of them and you don't even know you've eaten them because they're so light. They're very, very good.
What's the name of the company?
Antiu Xixona.
So if anyone from that company is listening and you want to get in touch for us to advertise your biscuits, we'd be happy to eat your free biscuits in the middle of the podcast with a cup of tea and speak about your product every week. How about that?
I've just remembered, I'm having a flashback of my youth here, all this talk about biscuits. I spent half my youth eating biscuits. In the UK and Ireland, it was very popular when I was a kid in the 70s to eat a pink coloured wafer. A lot of wafers seem to be pink. Do you remember?
Yeah, and they were strawberry flavoured.
Yeah, in theory. But I reckon there's more strawberry in my big toe. You know, it was just colour. It was food colour. But it gave you the idea, oh, pink, it must have strawberry in it.
It was kind of fooling you into thinking that you were eating a strawberry flavoured wafer because of the colour.
Yeah. But that was all the rage. That was very popular. But now they're not popular at all because I imagine that food colour, which I ate loads of, it's probably poisonous or something. And nowadays they don't have it. When I was a kid, I ate tons and tons of it.
Reza, have you ever had a finger?
Sorry?
Have you ever had a finger?
Oh, sorry. I quite misunderstood you there.
When was the last time you had a finger?
The last biscuit finger I had was not that long ago. It was the Spanish one, but I much prefer the British ones. I'm thinking of Cadbury's fingers, for example.
Yeah, Cadbury's make very good fingers, and I prefer the dark chocolate fingers made by Cadbury's to the milk. I think the milk are a bit too sweet.
Yeah.
And fingers, if you don't know, finger biscuits are crunchy, and it's typically a shortbread finger, which is covered in milk chocolate or dark chocolate. And they're very nice.
And they call it a finger just because it looks like a finger. It's kind of the shape. Well, it doesn't really look like a finger, but it's the shape of a finger. It's long. And they're usually round, long and round. I suppose it could be square, but they tend to be round. The closest they've got in Spain that I know are those Mikados. You know those Mikados?
Yes.
But they're not great.
They're much thinner, aren't they?
Very thin fingers.
Very thin fingers.
I prefer the Cadbury's. Cadbury's are a very, very, very well-known British company that make biscuits and have been doing so for a long time.
And they make good biscuits. I like Cadbury's biscuits.
Ooh, Craig, you've opened a can of worms there. They make good biscuits.
I opened a box of biscuits.
You opened a biscuits in there. They make good biscuits, do they? Or, as many millions of people now say, they used to make good biscuits, but they were sold to an American conglomerate who then outsourced the production to Poland and some other country. And many people are convinced that the quality has really gone down. It's in the paper all the time in the UK. It's in the paper.
It's in the paper all the time because British people really, really care about their biscuits. It's very important to us, our biscuits.
And I'll tell you a bit of trivia, which is not really related to biscuits, but related to a biscuit company. Cadbury's were known to be an absolutely visionary company in the day. They were founded by a family of Quakers. Quakers is a religious sect of people who are very, very devout, very dedicated to the religion, and they treated their workers exceptionally well. They built houses for their workers. They provided entertainment, sports facilities, all this type of thing. Like in the 19th or 18th century, not many companies did that. And they treated their workers exceptionally well. And they didn't overcharge. And they invested a lot of their money in charities and all that. And people think it's very sad that after a couple of centuries, they've had to sell the company on. It is kind of sad.
I'm not sure if Spanish speakers would have heard of the next biscuit. It's a Garibaldi biscuit.
¿Qué cosa?
Which
¿Qué cosa?
which has
Excuse?
it's a sandwich biscuit that has squashed currants, or some people say flies, moscas, in between, baked in between two very thin pieces of biscuit dough. Dough is masa, D-O-U-G-H, dough. So it's kind of like a currant sandwich, a currant biscuit sandwich. Currants are pasas.
Current, you mean de ahora?
No, currant pasa, as in pasa, as in the dried fruit.
And what's the difference between current, like now, and current fruit?
Well, there's the spelling. Currant is A-N-T when it's a pasa. So just remember the A in pasa and the A in currant. And currant ahora is with an E. So it's C-U-R-R-E-N-T.
Sounds Italian.
Do you like them?
I do. But I would say that, wouldn't I? Since I love fig rolls. You've probably heard us talk about fig rolls before. Not specifically in a biscuit episode, but we have mentioned them. It's one of our biscuits of choice, or my biscuits of choice, to refresh us while we are recording the podcast. It's very similar to a Garibaldi, but instead of currants, that's pasas de corinta, there's figs, higos. They're rolled or in like a bar, una barra, and made sweet with sugar. And it's kind of a paste on a pasta, which goes in the middle. And apparently this dates back to ancient Egypt. And it's still eaten in Egypt today. Egypt and the UK. They're very popular in the UK.
Well, I understand the Eastern connection with Egypt because of the figs, because figs are not common in the UK. Mm-hmm. So obviously came from the Middle East.
I guess originally, whenever it wasn't easy to keep food, the British, when they were amassing, when they were building up their empire, they came across all this interesting food, which they couldn't grow at home. Figs, for example, thought, well, how can we eat them at home? And if they brought them fresh, they were very soon going to go bad. So they came up with ideas to keep the products longer. So in the case of figs, make it into a paste, put in a bit of sugar and a few other things, put it in the middle of some dough, masa, pasta, and it'll keep a while longer.
And you're also getting the carbohydrates from the dough, so it makes it more nutritious. But yeah, one of my personal favorites, in fact, I think it is my favorite biscuit, is the Bourbon cream, B-O-U-R-B-O-N, which, if you don't know, is a biscuit sandwich like the Garibaldi. So two very thin, rectangular, dark chocolate flavored biscuits. Lots of adjectives there. Dark chocolate flavored biscuits. And there's a chocolate buttercream filling. So a kind of a sweet cream made with buttercream filling inside the sandwich, inside the chocolate biscuit. And the wonderful thing about Bourbons is when you dunk them in your tea, the buttercream starts to melt, the biscuit starts to melt, the tastes come together, and it's absolutely delicious. It's an orgasmic kind of taste.
Mind you, Craig, sorry to be the party pooper, agua fiestas, but what you said, your description of the Bourbon biscuit sounds fantastic, but very optimistic. Really? Dark chocolate these days? Do you often find them made with dark chocolate? If only. Ojalá.
Well, I think it's a bit like your strawberry wafers from childhood. It looks like dark chocolate because of the colouring, although when you actually taste the biscuit, you taste more sugar than chocolate. However, when you dip them in your tea, they're still quite tasty. My only complaint, though, is that when I was a child growing up in the UK, the buttercream in Bourbons and in many biscuits actually got to the edge of the biscuit. It filled entirely. And we were just having biscuits before this podcast. And
very expensive biscuits, by the way.
Right, very expensive biscuits. And the biscuits had some buttercream in the middle, but only half the size of the actual biscuit. And I noticed over the years that the amount of buttercream inside these sandwich biscuits is getting smaller and smaller and smaller because it saves the company money.
So their profits get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Exactly. And the buttercream inside the biscuit is never the same as the picture on the outside of the box.
Craig, it's interesting you mentioned the dark chocolate of the bourbon cream. And earlier we were talking about Cadbury Fingers, which can be covered in chocolate as well. Originally, it was milk chocolate, but these days you can also get them in a dark chocolate variety, in theory. But here's my general rule of thumb. Rule of thumb is como el guía. My general rule of thumb for biscuits is this. If they say it's milk chocolate, it's absolute crap. It's malísimo. If they say it's dark chocolate, it'll be like milk chocolate. Mm-hmm. It's not really going to be dark chocolate. That's my rule of thumb. Dark chocolate isn't dark chocolate on mass-produced biscuits, is it?
No, and never expect the biscuit to look like the picture on the outside of the box.
Yeah. So if they say dark chocolate, you're lucky if it has about 20% cacao, which isn't dark chocolate, you know. But if you buy dark chocolate, you might get a reasonable quality milk chocolate. That's my thinking.
So you were telling me before we recorded that you had a homemade biscuit yesterday. Tell us about that.
Well, now, if it's chocolate you like, and certainly in Craig's case it is, and I like a bit myself, for me, the ultimate chocolate biscuit is get any biscuit of your choice. Could be a Marie biscuit, could be a digestive, could be rich tea, anything you like, really. Even better if it's a homemade biscuit, a biscuit that you've baked at home, but whatever. Get a couple of those, break yourself off from a bar of chocolate, bar is tableta, good quality chocolate. Break yourself off a bit of chocolate, just enough that will fit on the top of a biscuit. Put it in between the two biscuits, make yourself a biscuit sandwich, and press it together. And then dunk that in your tea or coffee.
So the chocolate melts.
The chocolate will melt and help it to stick together. That is the ultimate, for me, the ultimate chocolate biscuit. You chose the chocolate and how much you put in, and you can't ask better than that, can you?
But you should use good quality chocolate, something like Lindt or some very good 70% perhaps.
No, or 80 even, or more.
Good quality chocolate. Another popular biscuit that you may be offered on a plate in the UK if you visit is a custard cream. What's a custard cream, Reza? It's very popular.
It is. Custard, first of all, is natillas. Oh, some of you are shocked. You went, natillas?
In a biscuit?
Los guiris come in natillas? Yes. There's nothing more British than custard. Custard is a very, very traditional British dessert.
Especially when it's hot on a pudding, on some kind of pie or pudding.
I don't know if the Spanish invented it. I know they love it in Spain, but it's very British too. So a custard cream is a biscuit which in theory has custard or a creamy version of custard in the middle. So it's a sandwich with a kind of custard, or I should say custard flavored, and maybe with a bit of vanilla as well in the middle of two flat biscuit layers. As I say, it probably isn't real custard these days. It might have been originally. That's a very popular type as well in the UK, isn't it?
Yep, especially for dunking. And another very popular biscuit for dunking, which was actually voted best dunking biscuit in 2016 in the UK. Yes, they actually vote for biscuits in the UK. So the best biscuit for dunking in your tea is a hobnob. Hobnob, Hobnob. So what are hobnobs, Reza?
Well, a hobnob is a brand name of a commercial biscuit. Technically, you would call it a rolled oat biscuit, but everybody calls them hobnobs, even if they aren't the original McVitie's hobnobs. McVitie's is the company. So they're made from rolled oats. Craig, what are rolled oats?
I'm pleased you asked me that, Reza, because rolled oats, O-A-T-S, rolled oats, difficult to say, rolled oats. They are traditionally oat groats, like pieces of oat that have been dehusked and steamed before being rolled into flat flakes under heavy rollers and stabilized by being lightly toasted. Now, that sounds a bit confusing, but if you imagine a peanut, for example, un cacahuete, it has a shell, it has something around it. Well, just imagine that shell is the husk around the oat. So what they do is they remove that because that's quite hard and difficult to eat and digest. So they remove that and then they steam it. And then they roll it very flat into these flat flakes, almost like cornflakes, under very, very heavy rollers. So there's a treatment process that makes it easier to put into the biscuit and easier to eat.
And oats are avena, by the way. In English, it's usually used in the plural form. Oats are avena. So one of the few biscuits that you can eat, which in a way is quite good for you because oats are good for you. Maybe the sugar and the palm oil and the additives and the stabilizers are not good for you, but the oats are good for you. It's similar to one of my favorites, fig rolls. Hey, figs are good for you. Don't know if all the carbohydrates and sugar are good for you, but figs are good for you, right? And chocolate is good for you. It's been scientifically proven. If it has a high percentage of cocoa and not too much sugar, chocolate stimulates the brain and has positive effects on the body.
It's probably not good for you in the amounts and quantities that I eat it, but if you don't have too much, then yeah, it probably is. But getting back to hobnobs, they are really kind of the Marines in the biscuit world. They are the really strong biscuits.
By Marine, you mean like a special soldier?
Like a Marine, the soldiers of the biscuit world, because when you dunk a hobnob, you can dunk it again and you can dunk it again. Wow. Right. And it doesn't go like a rich tea.
They're like tough guys. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, they're the tough guys.
Okay.
And you dunk a hobnob and it comes out of the tea and it's like looking at you and says, dunk me again, dunk me again. So you dunk it again into the tea and it doesn't break up. It doesn't go back into your tea.
Are you a big fan of hobnobs?
I do like a hobnob, and McVitie's make a chocolate hobnob.
I know they do, and they make milk
nice.
and plain. Which do you prefer?
Obviously the plain. So plain means dark chocolate. So I always buy the dark chocolate hobnobs by McVitie's, and you can keep dunking them and they don't break up.
Here comes a criticism which is about to get me into trouble, but what the hell, I'm used to it. In Spain, you make a version of hobnobs, but they're always rubbish. In Spain, they're far too sweet, in my opinion. Any generic copy I've seen in Spain, whether it's the supermarket brand or whether it's a Spanish company that makes hobnobs, they don't get it quite right. They put too much sugar in it, and they're just not like Marines, like Craig says. They're like ordinary foot soldiers. They're not special. You dunk them once or twice, and they've given up. They've surrendered. They go all soggy. No, don't you think, Craig? They're not the same.
They're not the same. The next on our list of biscuits is not actually a biscuit, but we've included it here because they're very popular in the UK, and you'll see them perhaps in people's houses when you go for tea, and definitely in the supermarket. Jaffa cakes. Jaffa cakes are named after Jaffa oranges, a specific orange that comes from Jaffa in Israel. And it's a sponge cake, like a kind of biscocho, and it has orange-flavored jam, marmalada, orange-flavored jam inside, and lovely thick chocolate on the top. And
again, Craig, sorry to interrupt, but I think he's romanticizing again. Lovely thick chocolate, ojalá, if only. But in this day and age, the tiniest layer, una capa finísima, but originally thick.
This is my memory from childhood, okay? I'm not speaking about this year. I'm speaking about when I was 10 or 11, and I used to have Jaffa cakes with my lunch in school. But are they cakes or biscuits? Well, actually, this went to court in 1991 because it wasn't sure whether Jaffa cakes were a cake or biscuit. And it was decided that the Jaffa cake should be considered a cake for tax purposes. And it was actually the best-selling cake or biscuit, depending on your opinion, in the United Kingdom in 2012. Very, very popular.
Now, here's something I discovered just recently, just because I happened to be in a couple of shops. In the UK, there are quite a lot of Polish shops
Quite a lot of
Polish shops.
Polish shops.
Polish. Catering for the Polish immigrants that live in the UK. And I discovered that the Polish people love Jaffa cakes.
Mm-hmm.
They're extremely popular in Poland, but they have their own brands. So you go to any Polish shop and you'll see loads of packets of what I would call Jaffa cakes, but what they maybe call Szkrowidoznowski or whatever they might call it, their version of Jaffa cakes, but they love them. And the Poles consider it almost a Polish thing.
Before we finish with some vocabulary describing biscuits, I'd like to recommend a recipe book for any of you thinking of making biscuits at home. So this book comes very, very, very well recommended by my stomach because I've eaten many of the biscuits and cookies in this book. And it's called Chewy, Gooey, Crispy, Crunchy, Melt in Your Mouth Cookies by Alice Medrich, who is an American expert on chocolate. And I will leave a link to her webpage so you can read about Alice and look at her wonderful recipes in the show notes, which you can find at inglespodcast.com/207. And the name of the book, Chewy Gooey Crispy Crunchy Melt in Your Mouth Cookies, is also in the show notes to this episode.
Craig, you better explain some of those words there.
Yeah.
What's chewy?
Well, to chew, C-H-E-W, is masticar. So chewy is the adjective. So if a biscuit is chewy, then you chew it. Can you think of any examples of chewy biscuits?
No, but if we mention maybe just chewing gum.
Of
It's
course.
gum that you chew, you're supposed to masticar, chew.
Chicle, yeah.
What about gooey?
Gooey, the nearest word to gooey in Spanish is pegajoso. So if you imagine that you have buttercream inside a biscuit and you dunk it in very hot tea, then the buttercream could go gooey. So it kind of runs. It's like not exactly solid, not exactly liquid, and it comes out of the biscuit in a gooey.
And crispy or crunchy?
Is the sound at the beginning of the podcast when I bit into my biscuit. Bit is the past tense of to bite. So I bit into my biscuit and it made a crunchy sound because it was a very crispy biscuit. So crisps are papas and crisps are also very crunchy, very hard and very brittle. Crunchy and crispy are two adjectives to describe fresh biscuits.
Craig, there are other expressions or idioms using biscuits. For example, to take the biscuit. That means to be too much or to be excessive. I better explain it because it's quite a weird expression. I've accepted all my wife's bad behavior. She's had a lot of bad behavior, right? But her affair with my cousin is taking the biscuit. It's excessive, you know. She's had lots of affairs. She spent all my money. She embarrasses me in public. But having an affair with my cousin is taking the biscuit. It's just excessive. I can't permit it.
The straw that broke the camel's back. Another expression with biscuit is to risk it for a biscuit. Would you risk it for a biscuit? Risk is arriesgar, and it means to take a risk, to do something risky for a good reward. So you do something in the hope that you get a biscuit as a reward. For example, what would you do for a biscuit?
Oh, there's virtually nothing I wouldn't do for a good biscuit.
for a good biscuit.
A good biscuit, yeah.
Yeah.
I know somebody who would risk life and limb. Limb is like your arms and legs. The expression to risk life and limb means risk everything, risk death for a biscuit. And that is my good friend in Alicante, Coco, my four-legged friend down there. Mm-hmm. He would risk anything, quite literally, for a biscuit. He's a dog, and if I offer him a biscuit, he'll throw himself in front of traffic. He'll hurl himself at a bomb. Anything for a biscuit, quite literally.
He'd risk danger for a biscuit. So, yeah, British people love good biscuits. In fact, in the UK, the average household, a household is a house where people live, like a family or a couple. The average household eats 103 packets of biscuits on average per year. So we love our biscuits. What's your favourite, Reza?
Oh, it's hard to give a
If you
favourite.
had to pick one, if you're in the supermarket, you're standing in front of the biscuit section, what do you choose for? You're only buying one packet. No guests are coming. It's only for you. What do you buy?
It's so important to me that it depends on how I feel, Craig. There's not one for all occasions. It depends on the occasion. But there are certain stable, steady favorites which I return to. Fig rolls are always good.
Yep.
Fig rolls. And particular brands of particular types. For example, chocolate biscuits. Okay, chocolate biscuits can be good, but bad chocolate biscuits, for me, are not good at all. So certain brands and certain types of, particularly Marks and Spencer's, they make good biscuits. Marks and Spencer, they used to do a type called an extremely chocolatey biscuit, and they were extremely chocolatey.
They were very nice.
They were very chocolatey. They put a really, really thick layer of chocolate all around the outside, and if you got the dark chocolate of that was good. And I particularly like the mixture of dark chocolate with ginger, jengibre. I love that mixture. What about you?
I would go for something that means to choose. I would go for possibly a bourbon cream because, as I said before, you dunk it, it melts, and you can also remove the top half and just eat the buttercream like you can with an Oreo as well. Or perhaps a good dark chocolate digestive biscuit.
And do certain biscuits dunk better in certain drinks? For example, in milk, is there a particular biscuit which is good for dunking in milk?
I would dunk a chocolate chip cookie in milk and perhaps a digestive, but not many. I much prefer dunking in tea and coffee. And if I had to choose tea, I prefer dunking in tea.
Me too. Because coffee, I usually don't drink as big a cup.
Right.
Whereas in tea, you've got more liquid, got more to dunk in, right?
And it goes into the biscuit, so you lose some of your coffee.
Now you're talking. What about in a hot chocolate drink? What would you dunk in that?
Anything at all. Pretty much anything.
Really, the one thing that I would not dunk in a hot chocolate drink is a chocolate biscuit.
Because you lose the taste?
Yeah, and there'd be two types of chocolate going on. So I wouldn't dip a chocolate biscuit in a chocolate drink.
Interesting.
Myself. You would?
Yep. You can't get enough chocolate, in my opinion.
Ah, okay.
Do you think Spanish supermarkets offer a wide enough biscuit selection?
For health reasons, probably yes. But as a personal opinion, no. In the UK, they offer far, far more. But maybe it's not a good thing that the UK has such a superb selection of biscuits to choose from compared to other countries. Because let's be honest, they're not good for you. Mm-hmm. So Spain's selection is not as good.
Yeah, I agree. And I also get quite disappointed sometimes going into chain supermarkets like Mercadona, for example, because every biscuit is an Hacendado biscuit and you don't have much selection at all.
Why are the British so good at making biscuits?
That's a very good question. It could be connected to the idea of afternoon tea, because that is a tradition going back many, many years. So, of course, when you're drinking your tea, you don't really want to have a lot to eat with the tea, but you do want something with the tea. So maybe this idea of creating different things to have with your tea in the afternoon, that developed into different types of experimentation with different biscuits. And also perhaps when friends come to your house and they drop in for tea. To drop in means to visit just for a brief half an hour or maybe an hour to chat, to have a conversation. So when friends come to your house, you can offer them something with the tea. What do you think?
Well, I think, yes, that's an important part of it. And also now I'm going to be critical of my own country. It may be because we're not so good at making some savory things. Savory means not sweet. Maybe it's because we're not so good at making savory things. Let's be honest. A lot of the things which aren't sweet in the UK that we make are not that exciting, and we don't pay that much attention to it. So we have to do something well, right? So we're really good at desserts, postres and biscuits. We're very, very good at it.
And now it's your turn to practice your English. What is your favourite biscuit? Do you have one? And do you dunk your biscuits in your drink, in your tea or coffee, or do you prefer your biscuits dry? Do you have any favourite biscuit recipes that you'd like to share with us? Please send us a voice message and tell us what you think about biscuits. You can send your message via our service SpeakPipe, which is speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. Reza, how can they contact us by email?
By email, craig@inglespodcast.com.
And you can reach Reza at belfastreza@gmail.com.
We'd also like to thank our Patreon sponsors, starting off with Bruno, who's our gold sponsor. Bruno is the man who organizes walking tours of Copenhagen, and you can check out his company on copenhagenwalkingtour.com, where you can find out all the information about tours in that city in Denmark. Or if you're more interested in South America, he also organizes walking tours of Rio de Janeiro in the favelas, which are completely safe because they're led by local guides, and some of the money helps the community to improve. You can find out about those tours on favelawalkingtour.com.br.
Yes, thanks very much, Bruno, for being a gold sponsor. And also, of course, thank you to our other wonderful Patreons who are supporting the podcast. They are Ana Giovanna, Dana Constantin, Pachi Ibañez, Manuel Tarazona, Juan Carlos Lorado, Beatriz Sánchez, Pedro Martínez, Maite Paracín Pérez, Lara Allem, Rafael Bancels, Nestor from Luces Extrañas, María Gervati, Lorena, Sara Jarabo, Carlos Garrido, Mamen, Juan Leiva Galera, Corey Finneran and his podcast on baseball at ivyMV.com, Miren Full, José Luis Araguay, Agus Paulucci, María Reidamen, Manuel García Petagón, Raúl López, Rafael, José Manuel Fernández Picazo, Pilar Martínez, Gambate Blog, Igor, Garmendia, Ignacio Espona, Kieran, Carlos García, Ana Ibarra, Marina Ortez Pena, and of course our latest sponsors to join our Patreon program, Juan Carlos Pantin Fernández, Joel Silvera, Alejandro Pluma, Alex Cuadra, José Emilio Villena, Emilio Manuel Martínez Rivas, and Antonio. Thank you, all of you.
And if you'd like to join our Patreon program, you can for as little as just $1 per month. And that way you get instant access to recent transcriptions that have been lovingly transcribed by Angelica Bello from Madrid. Just go to patreon.com/English podcast.
And thank you also to the pencil of Patricia Alonso, who continues working hard transcribing episodes for you. And we now have available episodes 1 to 21 and 131 to 142 on our blog at inglespodcast.com. And thank you to you for listening, and we'll see you in the next podcast. Reza, what's on next week's episode?
Next week, all about the word last.
It's goodbye from me.
And it's cheerio from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.